Alright guys, TacticalRab again today. Hope you're doing good and enjoying your day so far. The gentleman's agreement drama continues here in the Call of Duty League. Just a couple of weeks ago, Hacienda was added into the map pool and Rewind was removed for both game modes in Hardpoint and Search and Destroy. It turns out the pros had absolutely no say on the fact that this decision was being made. The Call of Duty League themselves decided Rewind was the most vetoed map, therefore it would be removed. And seemingly, the CDL is also stepping in terms of gentleman's agreements. We've talked about this now for years. HyDra says, from the single tap drama that has recently emerged, he seems to imply the league themselves wanted not to bother with this type of stuff, and therefore the single tap to sprint situation has now evolved to where it is today. Very much interested in your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Is this the beginning of the end to gentleman's agreements and competitive Call of Duty? Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. First of all, we got some hacker drama here. Now, you know, what you guys think about these clips or not? Is this guy hacking? You know, has he snapped on Zoomer through the wall here? And okay, he pre-aims him pretty nicely. Is it legit? Is it not? Okay, whatever. There's some clips going around. But it continues elsewhere as well. So this Halo pro, who apparently like also cheated back in H1Z1 back in the day, if you guys remember that game, pretty legendary stuff. But yeah, I don't even know what I'm going for it. Monstra, I don't know. Like it's one of these Falcons boys gamer tags. And seemingly Halo believed that he was cheating. So he has been banned for a grand total of 36,482 days, which is, well, basically 100 years. So we will see you on the 25th of November, 2124 at 2:34 p.m. That's when his ban is going to end. So he's cooked, basically. He's cooked. And it's interesting because I'm not sure there's been clear proof that's been thrown around about this. Now, it's pretty apparently like he admitted that, yeah, he cheated back in the day in H1Z1, but obviously he reckons that in Halo he never did. So it's all a bit confusing. It's not exactly COD related, but yeah, alleged cheating 100-year ban. Now, in Call of Duty, we saw the other day this guy Maestro, who had the wording come up at the top of the screen that said press Alt, whatever it was, for the engine owning cheat software to come up on the screen or whatever, and he was like, oh, I was just baiting you guys, and he went onto his OBS and he showed that he had like that kind of line put in there and trying to say, oh no, I didn't get caught guys, it was all just a prank basically. But then people looked at it and said, is the font the same? And they looked at some details and it seemed to me that probably the guy was hacking. So he's been banned basically at the end of all this after being accused of cheating and seemingly refusing some PC tests as well. He has been banned for 2 years on FaceIt. So, look, you could argue, if they're 100% convinced the guy was cheating, should he be banned for life? I don't know. Look, 2-year ban is a big deal, and he's cooked, obviously. And his teammate has received a season-long suspension for deleting the VODs. And the other guys are going to get suspended for the next cup as well. So it's interesting, isn't it? Because one of the guys was seemingly cheating. The big question that I often have about the cheating drama tends to be, did the teammates know, and how culpable were they? Because when Jimbo was cheating a couple of years ago, I think there was talk from aBeZy. So aBeZy, obviously on FaZe, FaZe's substitute Classic, I think at the time was teaming with Jimbo. And aBeZy was telling stories of how Classic would come out of scrims with Jimbo and say, this Jimbo guy is unbelievable. I can't believe he's not in the league. Or like, this guy's the best player I've ever seen. And obviously some people were like, maybe there's something a little bit suspicious in that. The Jimbo's just absolutely frying in practice and making plays that nobody can believe are legitimate for a player of his performance caliber up to that point in his career. But it didn't seem like Classic or the other guys knew. You know, maybe they could have thought maybe something was going on, but they didn't necessarily know. And especially when people are scrimming online and stuff, if your teammate's cheating, are you necessarily going to know about it? Are you equally culpable? Look, if you're deleting VODs, it kind of, you're like, that's guilty as far as I'm concerned. And then the other teammates got suspended as well. So definitely an interesting one. What do you guys think about this as well? The power rankings that the boys put together here at Breaking Point going into the first minor of the season. And this is kind of what we think it might be. Falcons are clearly 12th. It's not clear where it goes from there, I don't think, at all. So I guess we'll start from the top. Thieves are 4-0. Ultra are 4-0. Ravens are 4-0. And I think Thieves, clearly on the evidence so far, they've got to be the favourites, they've got to be number one. Ultra have also looked very good, they also beat FaZe. Ravens also beat FaZe. There are other series, though, were maybe not against quite as impressive teams, and they did, you know, they were 2-0 down to Cloud9 before they then reverse swept them. So, you know, deciding where OpTic go, where Ravens go, and all of these guys is a challenge. I can see why OpTic could be above Carolina. I could see it the other way around as well. OpTic, of course, 3-1, but they lost to Boston. Boston have got to be in the mix as well. They also have a bye to the second round. So, yeah, the only team that doesn't have a bye to the second round that's in the mix here is OpTic. And then, of course, FaZe. Like, I think it's almost impossible to put FaZe lower than 6th. It's FaZe, but still, based on results so far, they can't be above Ravens because they got 3-0'd by them. So, you know, at bare minimum, FaZe have got to be 4th, and likely they're further down than that. So we then go further down. Rocket in 7th feels a little generous, but then again, I'm looking at the other teams, I'm thinking, who else am I putting in 7th place? It's not very clear. Cloud9 have not impressed me. Surge have not impressed me. Gorilla's mate are 0-4 despite looking okay. And then Miami, I think Miami in 11th is a bit harsh, actually. I think they're probably, in terms of like upset potential and stuff, I think they're a bit better than this. But then again, I guess someone's got to be 11th, and we all know who's 12th. So it's interesting because the league is very competitive. But I do look at the bottom 6 teams and I say, there's no one in there that's really impressed me that much at all. Whereas in the top few, there are definitely some impressive teams, but I still think upsets are all over the place potential for this season. Scump, of course, getting ready to go for streams to be back over the next couple of days. The Miner's back this weekend. Finally, the CDL's back in business, as he says. I know that I've been a ghost since the holidays. Back to streams tomorrow. Was taking some time before the CDL season starts up in full gear coming up on the Friday. And speaking of that, we've got to dive into what some of the settings the pros are going to be using when it comes back to Friday. Because for the last couple of months, there's been a big drama and debate behind the scenes on single tap to sprint, double tap to sprint, auto tactical sprint, just gentlemen's agreements in general. Now, aBeZy said at the Christmas period that he, maybe not himself, but through Simp, he had put a request into the GA gentlemen's chat with the pro players, with all the representatives from their teams to say, hey, are we using single tap to sprint or not? Because Ghosty made the claim, I think it was the end of November, he reckons half the league are using it, because you can't really tell. If you play against another player, can you tell if they're using single tap to sprint or not? I think it's just a sensible setting to run, in my opinion. But the pros, generally even aBeZy, decided they don't want to use it because it increases the skill gap if you don't. And sure, maybe it does increase the skill gap very marginally, but is it worth destroying your controllers? Is it worth destroying your left thumb? And also, if you cannot possibly police it, then it becomes pretty impossible to actually do. So there's been a lot of talk about this over the last few days. Shotzzy seemingly came out on stream and said, yeah, it's no longer GA'd, people are using single tap as well, and HyDra commented on it as well. Now, it doesn't seem like HyDra's very happy about this, and I totally understand it from the perspective of a great player. Like, if your movement is unreal, there is a feeling that the players that are weaker in terms of movement will be able to get closer to you because of single tap to sprint. And maybe that is true to some degree in some part. I don't think it's a major deal. I think that every player gets better using single tap rather than double tap. Maybe the players that are worse at movement get a bit better compared to the best players, because, you know, if you're Shotzzy, if you're HyDra, if you're maybe aBeZy, these great players, then, you know, you're so quick, I suppose, that you can make double tap look like single tap. I don't know, I guess that's the argument. But the point basically is that HyDra doesn't seem especially happy with the way that this has been done, but the real question to me is, why has this happened, and why are we not hearing anything about it? Because the pros seemingly were not responding in the group chat with the other players to say, hey, yeah, no, it is unbanned now or whatever. People were just kind of hiding it behind the scenes. And what HyDra says is pretty interesting, especially if you read between the lines.
The only thing I changed in this is this single tap sprint. Because the league, I don't know, people want us to play with single tap. So I guess it's single tap.
So what do you guys think HyDra is implying here? Because he mentions the league. Now, by the league, does he mean the pros as in like the pros who are in the league and the pros, the people want us to play with single tap. But to be honest, the way that I listen to this is he's kind of talking about the league as in the Call of Duty League themselves. When he says people wanting us to play with single tap, it kind of sounds like there are people behind the scenes at the CDL that don't want to mess around with some of these GAs. This is interesting, especially after what happened with the map set drama. Hicksy was in, Rewind was gone, and the CDL just made the decision the pros had no say. And I do wonder whether the CDL themselves, knowing that this gentleman's agreement drama is happening everywhere, have decided on certain issues that they will take a stand. And, you know, maybe they've said to the pros, look, you know, we're not going to enforce anything like this, but we are certainly not going to do anything to stop players using single tap to sprint. And it's not like the CDL is going to mandate they use single tap sprint. Use the setting you want, but single tap to sprint is the best setting. So if the CDL have gone to the pros and said, look, this GA ain't going to hold, guys, we're not going to uphold it, nothing of the sort, then, you know, the pros are going to start using single tap. Now, it's not like the CDL can do everything. Like, if the pros agree between themselves to not use a certain gun, the CDL can't exactly force them to use that gun, although I will say that in the initial drafting of the CDL contracts back in MW19, there was a section of it that talked about collusion, and maybe that still exists. So the idea was maybe the CDL could say, look guys, you're not using collectively as a group of pro players a weapon that is more powerful than some of the other ones. We think that's collusion, we're going to do something about it. So, you know, the CDL could try and step in and take control of some of the GAs and take some of the power away from the pros. I think that would not be a bad idea. Like, I'm down for the pros to have less decision-making power when it comes to many of these things, because I feel like a lot of the time they just do not make good decisions. I guess the question is, would the pros, or would the CDL, sorry, make better decisions? And who actually are the CDL to choose this? As in, who is making these calls, if anybody, at the Call of Duty League? Is it a committee of former pro players, people that know the scene inside and out, people that have relationships with multiple players and multiple teams? Doesn't look like it to me. It's probably just the operations team choosing what they want to do. And maybe that's fine, but obviously the pros aren't going to be very happy about it. So yeah, single tap to sprint, it seems the pros are going to be using it. Of course, we can see from HyDra's POV, that's exactly what was happening right here. And just one final thing as well to close out the video for you guys. Kremp was giving his thoughts on coaches. Every team has a coach in the league, and the coaches are largely the substitutes for the teams as well. Back in the day, coaches could speak in the game. Certainly in Kremp day, Mr. X, for example, would be on comms with the team the whole time. Now, there was obviously lots of questions on whether this should or should not be allowed. Should the coaches be allowed to talk with the players at the moment they're playing the game? Does it reduce the skill gap, one could argue, because, you know, let's say you've got a player on your team who doesn't communicate very well or very effectively, then if you are coaching the team and you are on the comms, you could just call out for that particular player. You could also argue that a four-man team with no coach, for them to communicate and get everything, information relayed while they're also playing, there's a skill gap in that where some teams are better, some teams are worse. I think that is true, but then again, as Kremp says, every team has a coach. Why not allow them to talk in the game? And maybe like during a hardpoint map it shouldn't be possible, but I definitely do feel like, let's say in a game of search and destroy, the coaches probably should be on stage with the players and can talk to them between rounds or something. I don't know. Like, obviously in regular sports you take a bit of a timeout or something, but doesn't really happen in Call of Duty. So I think, I'm not sure I want pros or the coaches basically to be able to say what they want to the team every single moment of every single game. I kind of prefer it without, but I do think the pros should be more involved. And anyway, that's Kremp's perspective on the matter at that. But very much interested in your thoughts on all of this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.
I wish the coaches could be in the comms. Truthfully, I have no idea why they don't allow coaches in the comms. To my understanding before, it was like, hey, we got a bunch of not amateur teams, the pro teams, but they don't have the budget, right? On Complexity, we won so much that we could afford, like, we got Complexity a bunch of sponsors and all this shit. They got them, but like obviously us winning helped, right? So then they could afford to pay another someone else to be a coach. Now we're in the CDL era where every single team has fucking more than one coach. So I don't understand why coaches aren't allowed in the comms. I think they changed the rule because not all teams had coaches. and players complained, or like staff from those teams complained, and then they changed the rule, and then they just completely forgot about it. If I put out a poll right now, only the head coaches, how many of them would say yes? Like, let me talk. I bet you they would all say, fuck yeah, dude. Especially Troy Sender. You already know.